how to make a plan. When you go to a tournament, most of your opponents are going to know how to develop and castle. The big question is, who can use their pieces more wisely? Take a look at our chessboard here, and imagine that you're black. Your opponent has the bishop pair. What do you have going for you? Well, you've got safer pawns. You've only got 2 pawn islands. White has 3. In particular, let's focus on this pawn island right here. White has doubled c-pawns, so what we want to do is go after them. You want to fix those pawns because a pawn that has cement boots on is much easier to attack. So a good starting move is d6, making sure that pawn cannot advance forward. Now, I'm not going to make the best moves for white. I just want to show you black's plan. Now, we need to hit that pawn once, twice, hit him a 3rd time. A good way to start is bishop a6. That's right, making our first attack on the weak c-pawn. Now let's give white another move. Let's play knight a5. That's right, let's hit it a 2nd time. White another move, and then a 3rd time. We can put our queen on the square c7 later on. It's not as exciting as a kingside checkmate, but sometimes picking off pawn after pawn is the way to win in a tournament. Here I was black. Now it may look like my king is open, but actually we know when the kings are castled on opposite sides, it's a race to get to the other guy first. Here, my plan was to put 2 pieces on the a file. I played rook to a4, and my big plan is queen to the square a8. That would pin this pawn and threaten rook takes knight. And by the way, if he ever moves his knight, then I could throw my pawn down the board and open up more files. Now you might wonder, well, what happens if he boots my rook out of there with knight c3? Well, part of being a good chess player is anticipating your opponent's reply. We're actually going to get to that a little bit later in the video and also in our lesson. I had already guessed my opponent would play here, but I had a plan ready. The more moves you're expecting of your opponent, the better you're going to play in your tournament. My plan was rook takes knight. That rips open the a file. He took back. Now, I wasn't guessing here. I don't play dice with my chess pieces. When I sacrifice, I'm sure it's going to work out. Queen to a8 check. Now his king, if he goes back to the square b1, my queen can invade on the square a3. He doesn't want that. So he played the move king b2, but as you might notice, he doesn't have a dark squared bishop, and I do. So e4. He took my knight, he's up a whole rook, and yet he's completely lost. We put pp on the pp. There is no way to save that knight. And by the way, he's not doing any damage to my king. He played king c1, and I took with the bishop. In this position, he actually resigned. Let me show you why. If his king runs over to d1, which is pretty much the only way to stop queen a1 mate, I'll play queen a1 anyway. If his king runs away, bishop to b5 check, and uh-oh, he has to give me his queen to stay alive. I will take his queen with check. Hang on, we know how to make a plan. The next part of being a good tournament player is knowing that it's okay to win a long game. I would often be the last person in the room. I didn't mind playing a 3 or a 4-hour game. I always was okay with moving to the endgame. Winning in 90 moves was just fine with me. Here, let's pretend we're black. In fact, we're Bobby Fischer. Ooh. Black has a small lead in points. A rook for a bishop and pawn. But Bobby Fischer was not afraid to give away the material to win a long game as long as he was sure he was better in the endgame. And Fischer was pretty good about knowing endgames. Here, he gave away his material by playing rook takes bishop. And after pawn takes, he took with the rook. And when the king moves and takes. Now you may say, how's he going to win now? It's only kings and pawns. Well, we know when you get a promotion, you're going to win. It's going to take him a long time, but there is no extra points in chess for winning quickly. He played the move king to d5 because we know centralizing the king is a very important part of the endgame. And then he made himself a passed pawn to a5, and after takes, black went on to win because the king had to run all the way over to catch that pawn. Meanwhile, Fischer took this pawn, he walked over and grabbed all the remaining pawns and won the game. So boys and girls, the lesson there is play like Fischer, don't be afraid to go into the endgame. We're going to see a lesson on that coming up.